Rav Nachman of Breslov writes two hints to the identity of Shimon Bar Yochai. One is from a pasuk in Daniel, which says, Ir v'kadish min Shemaya Noches, that an angel and the Holy One descended from heaven. Within the context, it's a reference to an actual angel coming down. But these words, Ir v'kadish min Shemaya Noches, if you take the first letters, spell Shimon. So the idea is that Shimon Bar Yochai is like an angel who came from heaven. And the second remez is a Gemara in Masechah Shabbos. It says, "K'shenichnasu Chachamim leKerem b'Yavna." When the Chachamim entered the yeshiva of Yavna, it was called the Kerem because the students sat in rows like a vineyard. So the Chachamim said, "Asida Torah sh'tashtakach miYisrael." The time is going to come that Torah will be forgotten from the Jewish people. So Reb Shimon Bar Yochai got up and said, "Chas v'shalom." God forbid that Torah would ever be forgotten. The pasuk says, "Ki lo sishachach mipi zaro." Torah would not be forgotten from the seed of the Jewish people. So the most that could be said is, and this itself is a terrible calamity, that you will not find Mishnah Brura v'halacha Brura b'makam echad. You won't find a clear learning of the Mishnah and a clear outcome in halacha in one place. And the truth is, this is something that we find nowadays. It really is true. Because when you talk about Torah scholars, so they fall into two categories. You have people that are Bali Halacha, people that can paskin shaylas, but in terms of the lomdus, in terms of the depth of the understanding of the matters on a very fundamental level, they might not have that. You know, they're familiar with the Paiskim, with the conclusions of the halachic decisors, but to be able to go back to the Mishnah, to the Gemara, on a fundamental level and understand how you get from there to here, how you come from the sugya of the Gemara and you reach the final halacha, that is not always the case. And then you have other Torah scholars who are very, very great lamdonim, who can understand the Gemara and all the implications of the Gemara deeply, and yet to take it to its final conclusion in terms of the final halacha, that they aren't able to do. They aren't able to complete the process, which is called lasuke shmaita libud hilchasa, to work out the Gemara in a manner that aligns with the final halacha. So it's interesting. You don't find halacha brura and mishnah brura b'makam echad. You don't find clear mishnah, meaning a clear understanding of the Talmud, and the final outcome in halacha in one place. By the way, to me it's a mystery that when the Chafetz Chaim wrote his commentary to Shulchan Aruch, he named it Mishnah Brura instead of Halacha Brura. Seems a very, very curious thing. That really a more appropriate name would have been Halacha Brura. I don't know why he named it Mishnah Brura. Something I have to question. But this is what the Gemara says. But Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, in any case, had said that the Torah would not be forgotten from the Jewish people. So the pasuk he cites, Ki lo sishachach mipi zaro. If you take the last letters of those words, Ki, which is Yud, Lo, Aleph, sishachach, Ches, mipi, Yud, Zaro, Vav, we arrange them as spells Yochai. When the pasuk says the Torah would not be forgotten from his children, the antecedent of the pronoun his is Yochai. His Torah would not be forgotten because of the efforts of Yochai's descendant, meaning himself. And when Rav Nachman of Breslov quotes this Gemara, he says a very interesting thing. He says, not that Reb Shimon said that you're not right, that it's inconceivable that Torah should be forgotten. Because Reb Shimon really agreed to the Chacham that if things would follow their natural course, Torah would be forgotten. But he's promising that through his efforts, through what he accomplished, Torah would not be forgotten. And I think that the understanding of that may be as follows: that when we think of Torah being forgotten, it can be forgotten in a number of ways. At the time of Reb Shimon bar Yochai, the times of the Roman persecutions, the danger to Torah was the oppressive decrees of the Romans. Public teaching of Torah was forbidden, conferring smicha was forbidden, and Torah scholars were executed, persecuted, tormented. So there was a danger that Torah would be forgotten. Keep in mind, this is when Torah Shebaal Peh was still Baal Peh. So you didn't have libraries of Svarim that would be a repository for the entire Torah. The entire Torah Shebaal Peh was contained within human beings. And if these human beings would be killed or made ineffective, then the entire Torah is placed at risk. But there are other ways that Torah can be forgotten. Torah can also be forgotten if it is perceived as irrelevant. It is perceived as anachronistic. It relates to a certain time. There's no relevance to our own time. It deals with a more primitive society. We've advanced to a new level. And therefore, for us, Torah has no relevance. Torah could also be forgotten that way. What Reb Shimon bar Yochai did was that he revealed the Chelek HaSod. He revealed the hidden depth of Torah. And certainly one aspect of the hidden depth is that it relates to all times, all situations, all types of people. It addresses issues that maybe would not have been conceivable in the earlier times. That's the idea of the Chelek HaSod. It taught people that there's something here which is hidden, deeper, beyond that which meets the eye. And even those of us who really have no connection to the Chelek HaSod, we're not mystics, we're not Mekubalim, yet the fact that we understand that there is something deeper gives us confidence that the Torah is something worth learning and worth perpetuating, because it isn't simply a superficial work. There is something which is very, 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 very deep. And if there is something very, very deep there, then even the not so deep levels are worth learning. So Reb Shimon bar Yochai revealed the value of Torah, and therefore, as a result, he guaranteed that Torah would not be nishtakach, would not be forgotten, it wouldn't be abandoned for people thinking that it really has nothing to say to modern man. There's a very, very interesting question that Reb Tzadok HaKohen writes in the Sefer Pri Tzaddik. The Shulchan Aruch says that there are certain days that are considered days that are appropriate to fast on. It's not obligatory, but there are days that fasting is appropriate. One of the days he mentions is Zayin Adar, the 7th day of Adar, which is the yahrzeit of the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu. He says this is a day that is appropriate to fast. A terrible calamity befell the Jewish people, the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu. So if a person wishes to observe it in some way, he should observe it by fasting. The passing of Reb Shimon bar Yochai is observed by celebration, singing, dancing. You go to Meron, I don't know what the final count of people is, but they're anticipating 500,000 people this year going. And you're talking about, imagine 500,000 people driving down, I wouldn't say Bathurst. I don't think the road that goes to Meron is as wide as Bathurst. It's like 500,000 people going down Genstar, the street, and it's unbelievable. What goes on there, the celebrations and everything. It seems very strange. Why is it that the passing of Moshe Rabbeinu is properly observed by fasting, And the passing of Shimon Yochai is probably observed by feasting. The Tzadok HaKayin says a very interesting thing. He says that we have two types of rebbeim, two types of teachers. Sometimes we have a teacher who teaches us information. What he gives us is substantive. This is the type of teacher from whom we learn Psukim and Tanakh, we learn Prakim of Mishnayos, Dafim of Gemara, Simanim of Shulchan Aruch. Because his role is that he teaches us information. And the information that we have comes from him. When that Rebbe departs, that's a calamity, because there's no more information to be had. Had he lived longer, he would have taught us more Psukim and more Prakim and more Dafim and more Simanim. And now he's cut off. So whatever we got. We could have gotten much more. So it's really it's a terrible calamity. And therefore that's probably observed by fasting. There's another type of Rebbe who doesn't so much teach us substantive material, but he gives us a derech, he gives us a technique, he gives us a method. And the truth is that type of Rebbe we only fully appreciate when he's gone. Because as long as he's alive, we suspect that maybe we haven't mastered the method. We go back to check, to confirm. When he's not here, and then we realize, what he gave to us, we can use independently on our own. So then that's when we fully appreciate him. I'll give you a muscle. Maybe it's an irreverent muscle, but there's a phenomenon you find in Jewish communities nowadays of the Karlbach minyan. A minyan that's conducted a certain way, with certain nigunim that were written by Reb Shlomo Karlbach. In his lifetime, there's no such thing as a Karlbach minyan. Didn't exist. Right? The whole phenomenon only began after he passed away. So how do you explain that? Why should that be? So the answer is, pardon? No. Don't be so cynical. The idea is like this, that as long as he was alive, it wasn't imaginable that experience could be replicated. In other words, if you're there b'mechitzaso, with him, you can have that experience. If you're not there b'mechitzaso, you can't have that experience. His passing created a reality. That this is an experience which can be replicated, it can be transported, it can be observed here and there, and so on and so forth, but there's not so much bound to his person as it is a technique which he innovated, taught, transmitted, and it can be applied elsewhere. And that's a muscle. There's a certain type of Rebbe. It's not so much that he taught you things in a substantive way, but he gave you a technique, he gave you a derech with which you can approach Torah, and now using that derech, you can expand your own horizons. They say over from Chaim Shmulevitz that he once said a very, very interesting thing, that there was a certain sage in the Talmud about which in two different places the Gemara says two opposite things. There's one place it says that this person never said over something that he did not hear from his Rebbe. And in another place it says that this person said Chidushei Torah shlosh shamasan eisen me'olam, that no ear ever heard. So it's a contradiction. On the one hand it says that everything he taught he had heard from his Rebbe, on the other hand it says that he said Chidushim that no one had ever heard. So Reb Chaim said, I don't know if this is pshat, maybe the question is still better than the answer, but Reb Chaim said like this, it's true. The Chidushim he said no one had ever heard. But everything he said is what his Rebbe would have said. Why? Because it was the application of the Rebbe's derech to a previously untouched question. So it's true that the Rebbe never addressed that subject, but had he addressed the subject, this is exactly what he would have said, because the Rebbe's derech would lead to that conclusion. And therefore his chidushim, on the one hand, were chidushim that were never said, but on the other hand, were chidushim that ultimately derived from the Rebbe's teaching. Whereas people that are familiar with systems of Talmudic analysis know that Reb Chaim Brisker, for example, was such a Rebbe. Now, certainly there are many, 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 many wonderful chidushim of Reb Chaim Brisker. And still in yeshivas today, they say over the words of Reb Chaim. There are classic Divrei Torah of Reb Chaim. But it would seem to me that if you ask the average yeshiva bacher, how many Reb Chaims can you say over? How many actual Divrei Torah of Reb Chaim can you say over? You'd be shocked to discover that it would be relatively few. The average Ben Yeshiva probably could say 3, 4, 5. Maybe if he was a brisker, maybe he could say 10. Reb Chaim, Chedushim ben Chaim Alevi al Rambam is not a big sefer. But I would say that even to most Talmidei Chachamim, most of it is virtually unread. Because most people do not have a clue what's in there. There are a few, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 famous Reb Chaims. But his derech, the technique, the method of analysis that he gave, is something which is used day in, day out on a constant, ongoing basis. There was every contemporary halachic analyst is essentially using the methodology that Reb Chaim created. And therefore, everything is ultimately Reb Chaim-dik. It's what Reb Chaim might have said had he addressed this particular issue. I mean, obviously, nobody does it like the master. But it really is that methodology applied to new problems. So what Reb Chaim bequeathed to the world is not so much a body of substantive information. He did bequeath that, but more importantly, he bequeathed a derech, an approach, a methodology. And again, Mistam was this way, that as long as Reb Chaim was alive, people were dazzled by the radiance of his brilliance, and they said that only Reb Chaim could say things like that or teach things like that. None of us mere mortals could apply that methodology and be mechadesh similar chidushim. But after he was gone, so now we have to see, well, can we perpetuate, can we replicate his teachings? And if the answer is yes, then at that point we appreciate him to a greater extent than ever. Rav Tzadok HaKohen says that a Rebbe who was like that was Rav Shimon Yochai. Rav Shimon Yochai was one of those people who gave us eyes with which to see the depth of Torah. Obviously, there's quite a bit of substantive material in his teachings. There's a whole Zohar HaKadosh. But how many people are expert in Zohar HaKadosh? I think that probably there are more people that have a kesher to Shimon Yochai than have an extensive knowledge of Zohar. I would say the average Jew has very, very, very little comprehensive knowledge of Zohar, and yet, nevertheless, has a connection to Shimon Yochai, because the methodology that he gave, the ability to see beyond the superficial level, that's his legacy. And it's very interesting. There's a sefer based Aaron from Aaron Kaliner, and he writes a very cryptic thing about Lag Baimer, about Shimon Yochai. He says that just like the Ribono Shel Olam is the Ribono Shel Olam for everybody, Rav Shimon Yochai is Rav Shimon Yochai for everybody. What does that mean? It means like this. Let's take Einstein. Right? Einstein is not Einstein for everybody. Because you have to be at a certain point to get anything out of Einstein. If Einstein is giving a lecture on physics today, right? If you are below the threshold, it's a waste of time. Zero. There's nothing to be gotten. You're not going to understand anything what he has to say. If you're beyond that threshold, if you have a basic knowledge, I guess, of advanced mathematics, etc., 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 then you may be able to get something out of it. And the higher you are, the more you'll be able to get out of it. But below a certain level, you can't get anything out of it. The Ribono Shel Olam is not that way. The Ribono Shel Olam is there for everybody. Everybody can have a relationship with him. Undoubtedly, there are some people whose relationship is more sophisticated, more advanced. Some people whose relationship is more superficial. But everybody has a connection to the Ribono Shel Olam. Everyone has a connection to B'Shem Yochai. The B'Shem Yochai is a B'Shem Yochai for everybody. And that means even people that don't know Zayar, can't learn Zayar, are not the Mukubalim. Nevertheless, there's something to be had. And I'll try to bring out one aspect of this. Because we know that the period of Sfira is the time that the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva passed away. They didn't give honor to one another. So the question which is asked is that how is it conceivable that Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim should not give kavod to each other? I mean, we know that what was the great teaching of Rabbi Akiva? This is the great fundamental principle of Torah. So Rabbi Akiva undoubtedly talked about this often, the idea of loving one another. So how is it conceivable that the people didn't give respect to one another? Well, the answer is very, very simple. That kavod and ahava, love for another person and respect for another person, are really two different things. What do we love? Who do we love? We love people that are like ourselves. Right? Who do we respect? We respect the people that are unique. There's something special about them, something different about them. We admire and respect people who have qualities that we don't possess. Right? In other words, everyone has had a bagel. Right? I came a little late, so I missed my bagel. But everyone ate bagels. You're not going to go to a person and says, I really respect you. I watched you eat that bagel. It was really impressive. I mean, that's not the kind of thing you respect, right? I mean, I can do that. Everyone can do that. It's a common thing, right? So that's not going to be something for which I give you honor. I give you honor because I see in you some quality or some achievement which is special. That's why I give you honor. Of course, Rabbi Akiva taught to undoubtedly these 24,000 Talmidim loved each other. They would give each other the shirt off their backs. But it was lo nagu kavod because they didn't see the uniqueness of one another. I don't see you as being different than I am. And the truth is, you think about it for a second. Rabbi Akiva, the yeshiva, 24,000 Talmidim. What was the nature of the yeshiva? The Torah Shabbal Peh wasn't yet written down. So Rabbi Akiva lectured. And the 24,000 people listened to the lecture. They committed the lecture to memory. And essentially, all 24,000 were engaged in the same activity. Now, don't ask me the obvious question, how did they all hear? I don't know the answer to that question. The microphone wasn't yet invented. So how did 24,000 people hear Rabbi Akiva? It must have been some system.
Kosher too.
I don't know, maybe. Maybe.
Antecedent.
But the point is that they were all engaged in the same activity. So therefore, they loved each other, but there was no room to respect each other. But you have to know that a person, a human being, there is what is on the surface, and there's what's very, very deep. Mayim amukim leiv ish, v'ish tvunos yidlena. The pasuk says that a person's heart is like very, very deep water. But a man of understanding can draw that water. Because imagine a well, which is very, very, very deep. And you have to draw the water. You have to lower a bucket into the well. Then you can draw it out. So the uniqueness of a person, that's the leivish. The uniqueness of a person is like a very, very deep well. But a person of tremendous understanding, yidlena, can draw that out. If I just look at what's on the surface, see, you're no different than anybody else. But if I can penetrate to the depth of the person, then I can see your uniqueness. I can understand what makes you special, and accordingly, I can give you the kavod, give you the honor you deserve. So that's the Shimon Yochai. Shimon Yochai gives us the ability. He taught us to not settle for superficial understandings of things, to penetrate to the depth of something. And in the same way that when you learn a Gemara, so you understand that there are levels and levels and levels of depth. Ultimately, it achieves the level of sight. People are also that way. In other words, in every person, there's also a level of sight. When a person discovers the sight, the secret of that person, then there's a basis for kavod, because I can understand your uniqueness, what makes you special. That is the sight, and that is the basis of kavod. So Shimon Yochai's hilula, falling out on the day that the Talmidim and Rebbe Akiva stopped dying, is not a coincidence. It's what Shimon Yochai taught us is the tikkun, is the solution to the problem of Onag Kavod Zelazeh, which brought about the deaths of the Talmidim and Rebbe Akiva. Yes.
So are you saying that Shimon Yochai could teach each person his own special technique for that particular person?
No, I'm saying that. I'm saying that Shimon Yochai taught us or gave us the ability, he gave us the methodology for seeing beneath the surface. He trained us to not just look at what presents itself openly, but to deeply, deeply understand. And that is not only a valuable skill when you're learning up a mitzvah or a halacha or a gemara. It's a valuable skill when you're learning up a person. When you deal with a person, to be able to identify what is special about that person, that really is the basis of kavod. That's the tikkun of the whole problem of the deaths of the Talmidim of Rebbe Akiva. You know, the story of Reb Shimon Yochai, this is an amazing remez, is the Masechah Shabbos. On what daf? Daf Lamed Gimel, right? What the daf would it be? So an amazing remez. That the story of Reb Shimon Yochai is there on Daf Lamed Gimel, and the Gemara tells the story that he was forced to run away because of the Romans, and he found a cave, and he was miraculously sustained by a carob tree and a stream of water, and he learned Torah with his son for 12 years from Eliyahu Hanavi, and then the time came to come out of the cave, and he came out of the cave, and lo and behold, he discovered an amazing thing. What were people doing? People were plowing, people were planting, people were engaged in agriculture. They couldn't understand that. What are they wasting their time for? He says, we had lived in a cave, we were sustained by carob and water for 12 years, we were able to learn Torah from Eliyahu Hanavi. How do they look at these people? They're wasting their lives away. Life is so short, and this is what they're doing with their time. They're planting, plowing, farming. So it says that wherever they looked, the site burst into flames. They'd look at this orchard, explosion. This farm, an explosion. This pasture, an explosion. Finally, a Baska, a heavenly voice, came forth and said, you want to destroy my world? He says, go back to your cave. So they went back to the cave for another year. After the year, so they realized that they should be allowed to leave. The Gemara says even the Rishoyim are only punished in Gehenna for 12 months. So they left the cave. And the Gemara says that his son, Reb Shimon, still, wherever he looked, burst into flames. But wherever Reb Shimon Yochai looked, it was repaired. Finally, they encountered a man. There was a man who was running in the street with 2 bundles of hadassim. And it was a Friday. So they asked the person, where are you going? Why are you carrying the 2 bundles? So he said, this is for Shabbos. One corresponds to Zohar, one corresponds to Shomer. And Reb Shimon Yochai told his son, look, you see how beloved mitzvahs are to them? And that's the story. So my Rosh Hashanah asked a question like this, that if after 12 years in the cave, they were so unable to understand how a person could farm and waste his time and engage in agriculture, so you'd think after 13 years in the cave it would be even more so. Well, what was the extra year meant to accomplish? So the Rosh Hashanah explained like this, that there's one level after 12 years of Mesiras Nefesh, of sacrifice, of hardship, learning Torah from Eliyahu Hanavi, they were on a level where they were like malachim, they were like angels, and to be engaged in worldly matters was inconceivable. After 1 year extra, Lisa of Shimon Yochai came to a deeper level of understanding. To understand that there is no categorical imperative. That it isn't that everyone is meant to be doing the same thing, but that every person is unique. And perhaps this is the way I should live my life, but perhaps you should be living your life in a different way, and therefore what you're doing is appropriate for you, whereas what I'm doing is appropriate for me. That's an understanding which required the extra year of reflection. Because after 12 years, he was on a very, very high level of devotion to Torah, that he understood that Torah is extremely valuable, a person should give up and sacrifice and will be sustained miraculously. But at that level, he didn't see there was room for individual differences. It was only after the 1 extra year he was able to see that everyone is different. And this is your role in life, and this is your role in life. And even that very simple Jew who's running in the street, he was able to point out to his son that, you see, this is not a very simple Jew. This is a person who is very, very deeply committed to mitzvahs, that he's carrying the 2 bundles of Hadassim, one for Zohar, one for Shomer, and you see how beloved mitzvahs are to them. So don't belittle this person because he seems to be a simple Jew. He may seem to be a simple Jew. That's only on the superficial level. But when you look at it deeply, you see he's a very special Jew. And this is the extra insight that Shimon Yochai came to in that 13th year. But this is the same idea that we're talking about, the idea of kavod, the idea of recognizing what is special and unique about every individual. And you know, we live in a society where we always look up to people. We look up to Rabbanim, we look up to Talmidei Chachamim, we look up to the people that are greater in stature than we are. And sadly, one of the consequences of that is that we tend to look down at the people that are perhaps a bit lower on the totem pole than we are. That's a mistake. In other words, there is something which is special about every Jew. And wherever he happens to be on the hierarchy, on the totem pole, is irrelevant. Because even a person who may be relatively low on the totem pole, nevertheless is a person of great, great value that we have to acknowledge and we have to respect, and we have to give him the kavod that is due to him. My father used to say that when he was in the Mir Yeshiva, so there were many Bachrim who were considered Ga'ainim. They were considered to be outstanding individuals, Ga'ainim. But a Gain didn't have to be a Gain in learning Torah. In other words, whatever quality a person had, they would call him a Gain in that quality. So for example, if a person was a Gain at speaking publicly, he was a Gain in speaking publicly. If he was a Gain in dancing, he was a Gain in dancing. Or if he could sing, he was a Gain in singing. In other words, they recognized the qualities of people, even if they were not necessarily related to the supreme value, which was learning Torah, but they saw that every person had a unique quality and was deserving of kavod and respect in recognition of that. And that's really part of the legacy of Shimon Yochai. Because we know that Torah was only given to the Jewish people as a whole. It says, V'yichashem Yisrael neged har, that the Jewish people camped in front of Har Sinai. They camped as one heart, and as one man. There was a unity. But one of the things that can be terribly damaging to that unity is when we fail to acknowledge the uniqueness of every single Jew, what is special to every single Jew. When we belittle other people, when we say, oh, that person doesn't count, he's not important, he's not valuable. And Reb Shimon Yochai teaches us not that way. But he teaches us that even at the same time that we recognize that learning Torah is of supreme value, But every Jew is valuable, each in his own way, and is deserving of kavod. So these are some thoughts for Lag BaOmer, and there still is a lot more mystery with Lag BaOmer than meets the eye. But of course, what would you expect? If it's a holiday which celebrates the Hilul of Yochai, who is entirely mysterious, then obviously the holiday itself will have many mysteries. But it should be a very happy day, and Be'ezus Hashem, what he has to teach us, we should learn well.